The lands between hold secrets that would drive mortals to madness. Beneath the golden veneer of the Erdtree's light, something far more sinister writhes in the shadows. What if everything you thought you knew about Elden Ring's world was merely the surface layer of a cosmic horror so profound that even the gods themselves tremble before it? Welcome back, fellow Tarnished. I'm about to take you on a journey through the most bone-chilling theories that the Elden Ring community has unearthed. These aren't just clever interpretations of item descriptions or environmental storytelling. These are revelations that will fundamentally change how you see every character, every location, and every seemingly innocent moment in your journey to become Elden Lord. Over the past year, I've dove deep into the community's most haunting discoveries. I've analyzed countless hours of footage, cross-referenced hundreds of item descriptions, and consulted with some of the most dedicated lore hunters in the community. What we've uncovered together goes far beyond what FromSoftware explicitly tells us. It's a web of implications so disturbing that I genuinely question whether Miyazaki intended for us to piece together the full picture. By the end of this series, you'll understand why the shattering wasn't just a political catastrophe, but potentially the universe's last desperate attempt to prevent something far worse. You'll discover why certain characters' motivations are infinitely more terrifying when you understand what they're truly trying to accomplish. And you'll learn why the very act of becoming Elden Lord might be the most horrific fate imaginable. But first, let me share with you the theory that kept me awake for 3 straight nights after I first encountered it. The Erdtree isn't what we think it is. Everyone who's played Elden Ring knows the basic story. The Erdtree is this magnificent golden tree that represents order and grace, blessed by the greater will. It's the source of all life in the lands between, and our ultimate goal is to restore its power by mending the Elden Ring. That's the surface narrative. But what if the Erdtree is actually a parasite? Think about this for a moment. We know from various item descriptions that life existed in the lands between long before the Erdtree appeared. The primordial crucible, the ancient dragons, entire civilizations flourished without any golden tree looming over them. Yet somehow this tree didn't just appear, it dominated everything. It became the center of all existence, the source of all meaning. That's not how trees work. That's how parasites work. Consider the Crucible Knights and their incantations. These abilities are described as aspects of the primordial crucible, the original source of life. But they're also explicitly stated to be manifestations of the Erdtree's primal vital energies. How can the Erdtree's energy predate the Erdtree itself, unless the Erdtree absorbed something that was already there? The evidence becomes even more disturbing when you examine what happens to those who die in the lands between. Their souls don't move on to whatever afterlife they might have originally been destined for. Instead, they're drawn back to the Erdtree, absorbed into its roots, recycled into its system. The tree has created a closed loop where nothing escapes its influence. But here's where it gets truly horrifying. What if the greater will isn't some benevolent cosmic force? What if it's the intelligence behind this parasitic system? Look at how the 2 fingers operate. They're described as interpreting the will of the greater will. But their actions consistently serve to strengthen the Erdtree's hold over the lands between. They choose Empyreans who will perpetuate the system. They guide Tarnished toward becoming Elden Lord, which means becoming bound to the very parasite that's consumed their world. The finger readers, those ancient crones scattered throughout the lands, have lost their purpose because their 2 fingers have died. But what killed them, and why do the remaining finger readers seem so desperate, so lost? It's as if they're starting to realize that their entire faith was built on a lie. This parasitic theory explains so much about the world's current state. The shattering wasn't just political upheaval. It was the moment when some of the most powerful beings in the lands between realized what they were truly serving. Marika's rebellion against the Golden Order makes perfect sense if she discovered that she wasn't a god but a host. A vessel for something that had been feeding on her world for centuries. Radagon's attempts to repair the Elden Ring take on a completely different meaning in this context. He wasn't trying to restore order, he was trying to repair the feeding mechanism that kept the parasite alive. His transformation into Marika, their fusion into a single being, might have been the parasite's attempt to create a more stable host. But the most terrifying implication of this theory is what it means for us, the Tarnished. We're told that we were stripped of grace and exiled only to be called back when we were needed. Called back by whom? By Marika? Or by something that was using her voice? Every great rune we collect, every step we take toward the Erdtree, every victory we achieve might be feeding the very system we think we're trying to save. The grace that guides us, those golden rays of light that point us toward our objectives, might not be divine guidance at all. They might be the parasite's way of herding us exactly where it wants us to go. Think about the endings for a moment. In most of them, we become Elden Lord, bound forever to the Golden Order. We think we're ruling, but what if we're just the latest in a long line of hosts? The Age of Stars ending, where we journey into the cold dark of space with Rani, suddenly seems less like a romantic adventure and more like the only genuine escape from a cosmic horror that has its tendrils wrapped around an entire world. This interpretation transforms every character's motivation. Rani's conspiracy to steal the Rune of Death wasn't just political ambition. It was an attempt to break free from a system that had trapped everyone in an endless cycle of death and resurrection, all feeding back into the same parasitic entity. Her determination to cast away the Golden Order and venture into the uncertainty of the stars becomes an act of desperate courage rather than mere rebellion. Mohg's obsession with his own dynasty takes on new meaning too. His attempts to create an age of blood might seem grotesque, but what if he sensed that blood was one of the few things the Erdtree couldn't fully control? His palace exists outside the Erdtree's direct influence, in a realm where its golden light cannot reach. Even Miquella's various projects, his attempts to cure Malenia's rot, his work with unalloyed gold, his efforts to grow his own tree, all of these could be seen as desperate attempts to find alternatives to the Erdtree's system. A child prodigy who grew up understanding exactly what kind of prison he was born into. The merchants buried beneath Leyndell, driven to madness and embracing the frenzied flame, might have discovered this truth. Their calls for everything to burn, for all distinctions to be melted away, could be the only solution they could conceive of when faced with a parasite so thoroughly integrated into reality itself. But this is just the beginning. This parasitic Erdtree theory, as disturbing as it is, pales in comparison to what we've discovered about the true nature of the outer gods. Because if the greater will is a parasite, then what does that make the other cosmic entities that hunger for influence over the lands between? The god of rot, the formless mother, the frenzied flame, these aren't just alternative sources of power. They're competing parasites, each trying to claim the same host, and we, the Tarnished, might be walking directly into the middle of a feeding frenzy that spans dimensions. The revelation about competing parasites leads us to an even more disturbing possibility. What if the lands between isn't the first world these entities have consumed? When you examine the architecture scattered throughout the game, something becomes immediately apparent. The ruins don't belong to any single civilization. Stone structures that predate human settlement sit alongside remnants of cultures that clearly developed advanced magical techniques. Ancient dragon temples exist in the same spaces as underground cities built by beings we can barely identify. This isn't the natural archaeological record of one world's history. This is the graveyard of multiple realities layered on top of each other like geological strata. Think about Farum Azula floating impossibly in the sky, twisted and broken by forces that exist outside of time itself. The description tells us it's been crumbling since time immemorial. But that phrase should terrify you. How can something be crumbling since before time began unless time itself has been broken and reset multiple times? The ancient dragons that once ruled there wielded red lightning and possessed stone scales that could manipulate temporal flow. But look closely at their remains. Those aren't the bones of creatures that died naturally. They're the fossilized remnants of beings that were flash-frozen in moments of absolute terror. Their forms twisted into impossible positions as reality collapsed around them. Placidusax, the ancient dragon lord, exists in a pocket of twisted time, waiting eternally for his god to return. But what if his god didn't abandon him? What if his god was consumed, digested, and integrated into the parasitic system that would eventually become the Erdtree? Placidusax might be the sole survivor of the previous iteration of reality, doomed to wait for something that no longer exists in any recognizable form. The eternal cities present an even more chilling possibility. These underground civilizations, banished beneath a false night sky, represent attempts by previous inhabitants to hide from the cosmic parasites above. They developed artificial life, created silver tears that could mimic any form, and pursued technologies that might allow them to escape their reality entirely. But their punishment wasn't just banishment, it was integration. The Nox became part of the current system, their knowledge absorbed. Their rebellious technologies turned into tools that served the very entities they tried to escape. The mimic tear isn't just a useful spirit, Ash. It's a monument to a civilization's failed attempt at freedom, now serving as entertainment for the parasites that destroyed them. This pattern repeats throughout the lands between. Every culture, every attempt at independence, every rebellion gets absorbed and repurposed. The fire giant's flame that could burn the Erdtree wasn't just a threat to be eliminated, it was a resource to be controlled. Notice how flame-based incantations still exist within the Golden Order's framework. The giants weren't destroyed, they were processed. The underground civilizations, the ancient dragons, the fire giants, even the primordial crucible itself, all of these represent previous attempts by life to exist independently. And all of them have been consumed, their power redirected to feed the current parasitic system. But here's what makes this theory truly nightmarish. If the lands between is built on the remains of multiple consumed realities, then the shattering might not have been the first time this cycle was disrupted. What if reality breaks and resets periodically, each time creating new opportunities for the parasites to feed? The Tarnished aren't the first warriors to be called back from exile. The description of various weapons and armor pieces reference heroes from ages long past, champions who achieved great deeds and then mysteriously vanished from historical record. What if they succeeded in their quests, became Elden Lord, and then reality reset anyway? This would explain why the two fingers seem so desperate, why the finger readers have lost their purpose, why even the greater will appears to be weakening. This isn't the first cycle, and it might not be the last. The parasites are running out of fresh realities to consume, and the current world is starting to show signs of terminal exhaustion. The scarlet rot spreading through Kaled isn't just a disease. It's a symptom of reality breaking down as the parasitic system reaches the limits of what it can sustain. The rot doesn't just destroy, it transforms, creating new forms of life that exist outside the Erdtree's control. Millennia might not be cursed, she might be evolving into something that can survive the next reset. The frenzied flame's desire to burn everything away suddenly makes perfect sense in this context. If reality is trapped in an endless cycle of consumption and reset, then complete annihilation might be the only genuine escape. The three fingers aren't offering madness, they're offering mercy. But there's something even more disturbing to consider. What if this cycle isn't random? What if something is deliberately orchestrating these resets, harvesting the energy released when entire realities collapse? The description of various remembrances mentions that they're hewn into the Erdtree, becoming part of its eternal memory. But memory requires consciousness. The Erdtree isn't just a parasitic organism, it's a thinking entity that preserves the experiences of every being it consumes, every reality it absorbs. Imagine existing as a conscious entity that feeds on the death of universes, accumulating the memories and experiences of countless civilizations across multiple iterations of reality. Each reset provides new flavors of suffering, new varieties of hope and despair to savor. The Erdtree might not just be a parasite, it might be a cosmic gourmand, cultivating realities like a farmer cultivates crops. This interpretation explains why grace appears golden but feels hollow to so many characters. It's not divine blessing. It's the warm glow of a digestive system, the satisfied radiance of something that has fed well and is ready to feed again. The most terrifying aspect of this theory is how it recontextualizes our role as the Tarnished. We're not heroes on a quest to save the world. We're seasoning being added to improve the flavor of reality's next consumption. Every choice we make, every ending we pursue, every moment of triumph or tragedy we experience is being carefully cataloged and preserved for something's eternal enjoyment. Even our attempts to break free from the system might be anticipated, expected, perhaps even encouraged. Rebellion adds complexity to the experience. Suffering becomes more poignant when it comes from those who fought hardest against their fate. But if this theory is correct, then there might be hope hidden in its very horror. Because if the system requires conscious experience to function, if it feeds on the complexity of living beings struggling against their circumstances, then the one thing it might not be prepared for is conscious beings who understand exactly what they're fighting against. The knowledge itself might be a weapon, understanding the true nature of the parasitic cycle, recognizing the signs of reality's approaching reset, preparing for what comes next. These insights could be the key to breaking free from a pattern that has repeated across countless iterations of existence. The question becomes, how do we fight something that exists beyond the boundaries of our reality? How do we resist a system that has consumed entire universes and turned their remains into stepping stones for the next feeding cycle? Perhaps the answer lies in the very anomalies that the system cannot fully explain or control. Torrent, our spectral steed, appears without warning and serves no master we can identify. Unlike every other aspect of our journey, Torrent seems genuinely free, unbound by grace or the expectations of any outer god. What if creatures like Torrent represent fragments of realities that somehow escaped consumption? Survivors from previous cycles who learned to exist in the spaces between worlds. The spirit-calling bell that summons our ash companions might be more than just a gameplay mechanic. These spirits exist in a state that the Erdtree cannot reclaim, preserved in forms that resist integration into the parasitic system. They remember their purposes, their loyalties, their individual characteristics, even in death. They are proof that consciousness can persist outside the cycle. Even more intriguing are the implications of Miquella's unfinished Erdtree. Unlike the Erdtree, which grew by consuming what came before, Miquella's tree was an attempt to create something genuinely new. Its failure might not have been due to Mog's interference or Miquella's own limitations. It might have failed because the very concept of independent growth is incompatible with a reality that has been thoroughly colonized by parasitic entities. But here's what truly chills me about these discoveries. If consciousness itself is the food source, if awareness and experience are what these cosmic parasites crave, then every moment we spend contemplating these theories, every realization we have about the true nature of our world, every flash of understanding about our predicament is potentially feeding the very system we're trying to comprehend. The act of seeking truth might be exactly what the system wants from us. Our horror at discovering these implications, our desperate search for escape routes, our growing understanding of the cosmic scope of our imprisonment, all of this might be the most delicious meal these entities have tasted in eons. Think about how this knowledge changes you as a player. Once you understand that the Erdtree might be a parasite, you can never look at its golden light the same way. Once you realize that grace might be guiding you toward your own consumption, every sight of grace becomes a reminder of your potential doom. Once you consider that your victories might be feeding something unspeakably vast and hungry, Every boss fight becomes an act of cosmic collaboration with forces beyond your understanding. This is the true horror of Elden Ring's deepest lore. It's not just that the world is more dangerous than we thought, or that the gods are more alien than we imagined. It's that knowledge itself might be a trap. Awareness might be a form of participation, and understanding might be the very thing that ensures our eternal imprisonment. Yet even in this cosmic nightmare, there remains one possibility that these theories cannot fully explain away. The fact that we can conceive of these ideas, that we can imagine alternatives to the parasitic system, that we can even contemplate escape suggests that consciousness might be more powerful than the entities that seek to consume it. Perhaps the real battle isn't against the outer gods or the Erdtree or even the cycle of reset and consumption. Perhaps the real battle is for the right to remain genuinely conscious, genuinely free, genuinely capable of surprise in a universe that wants to reduce everything to predictable patterns of feeding and growth. The lands between may be a cosmic horror beyond imagination, but they are also home to beings capable of imagining something better. And that imagination, that refusal to accept even the most overwhelming evidence of hopelessness, might be the one thing in all of existence that cannot be consumed, processed, or integrated into any parasitic system. That spark of defiant consciousness, that stubborn insistence on the possibility of freedom even in the face of cosmic predators, might be what makes us truly dangerous to entities that have grown fat and complacent feeding on the collapse of realities. We are tarnished and we have seen the truth. Now the question is, what will we do with it?